Welcome back to Voices of Impact, where we explore leadership beyond strategy and performance and into identity, alignment, and the kind of impact that lasts. So each episode, we bring you honest, raw conversations and lived experiences with leaders, creators, and change makers who are redefining success and showing up with authentic leadership, what it really looks like. So because behind every meaningful career, business, or movement, there's often something deeper happening, and that's the identity shift. Today's conversation explores a fascinating lens for understanding alignment at work. What if success wasn't just about working harder or optimizing productivity, but about understanding how your energy is actually designed to operate? So many professionals are operating from pressure, expectations, and constant effort. We try to optimize it and manage our time better, pushing ourselves harder. So what would that look like when we use our energy to kind of really build our business or really operate in the workplace? So I'm excited to welcome Kat to the show for a fascinating conversation about human design and understanding your energetic blueprint, right? And that really can transform how you work, how you lead, and how you make decisions. So Kat is a life coach and human design expert who helps people turn insight into meaningful real-world change in ways that feel practical, grounded, and deeply personal. Her work focuses on embodiment, helping people cut through the noise, reconnect with their own inner wisdom, and make decisions with greater clarity and ease. So rather than simply understanding ideas intellectually, guides individuals to integrate what they learn into everyday life so they can create careers and lives that feel lighter, clearer, and more aligned. So what makes this conversation especially powerful is that bridge between strategy and self-awareness, right? Because we both believe in that alignment creates more sustainable success than constant effort. Self-awareness is a powerful leadership tool, right? We always talk about the emotional intelligence, but we don't know how that looks like, right? So leaning into that, and then when people trust their internal guidance, or we call it the North Star, decisions become clearer. So today we'll explore how human design can help professionals understand their energy, decision-making, style, and natural strengths in the work. So thank you, Kat. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm super excited about our conversation today.
Likewise. I think this is an amazing topic that we're having because I know a lot of people are struggling there, to all our listeners. So let's get into it. Can you share the moment or series of moments that brought you from the usual career answers, right? Books, job changes into human design and energy work?
Of course. So I actually had a long stretch of trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my career. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I first studied chemistry, which is what I wanted to do when I was like 18. And then I changed my mind and I went into theater. And then that didn't feel sustainable. So I went into the travel industry, which is where I built a quite successful career for more than a decade. But something always felt off. I was never really, quite happy with where I was. But I couldn't put my finger on it because, from the outside, I had, the great career. I was making money. I was being promoted. I always worked in really good environments, but it was really hard for me to kind of say, well, that's not good enough, And I also wasn't really a spiritual person, like in any way. And then about 6 years ago, so that's at the start of the pandemic, which is crazy to think it's 6 years ago since the pandemic, but it is.
Exactly.
So about 6 years ago, I randomly saw something on Instagram about human design and it really caught my attention. So I went and generated my own human design chart. And for those who don't know, human design is a self-awareness tool that combines different ancient wisdoms like the Kabbalah, the chakras, the I Ching, and combines them with like modern sciences. And it shows you generate your chart and your chart shows you how your energy is meant to be used, what's your unique decision-making process, and how, what's your purpose in life, how you're meant to go after your purpose. It's a very detailed system. There's so much information in human design. So when I generated my own chart, it was such a strange moment because, as I said, I wasn't really spiritual, but I read something that made so much sense. And in many ways, I felt like someone gave me the words that I didn't have to describe what was wrong, why I had been feeling the way I'd been feeling all this time. And so I started like getting into it, and it's such a rabbit hole, human design. Yeah, and I started experimenting with it. And, and it wasn't like, of course, like an overnight decision. I didn't go from the corporate career to being a human design coach in like one evening. And I actually pushed back a lot, even like after knowing what I was doing wrong and why things were not working out the way I wanted them to work. I was so conditioned that I kept like trying to make things work in the way that's like traditionally acceptable.
Right.
But yeah, eventually I took the leap of faith.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when, and I've been doing this officially for a bit over like 6 months, unofficially for much longer than that. But it's the first time that I feel that I'm doing something that makes me happy in like all the different ways possible.
Mm-hmm.
So
Amazing.
I'm glad I found my calling after all those like detours that I
Yes,
took.
that's the journey, right? Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your story. And I think that's inspiring. And I can relate to a lot of things you're saying because, sometimes like we just think we kind of push. And I could, like, when you said, like, I just tried to get into that path or traditional path, I pushed harder. I was like that too. It just didn't make sense to me. I wasn't a spiritual person either. And I think all high achieving women, we're so focused on being go-getter, goals, traditional, money, compensation. Like, that's what we're conditioned, like you said. And then
Yeah.
suddenly we get this like thing where it's just misaligned. Nothing's working out. Similar to me, like, there are days I was unemployed. Like nothing would work out. Everything would just fall apart. And that's when you get that, like we call it awakening or like that aha moment of like, something's not okay. Like we need to listen to it. And I love how you got into human design. And this is something I just started to learn too. I didn't even know like there's a blueprint called energy blueprint that like shows how you live your life or relationships and how you do work in the workplace or in like entrepreneurship until recently. And it makes a huge difference, right? It actually gives you
Absolutely.
a sense of ease, right? You're not forcing anything. It's just very in alignment. So I love how you get onto that, even though, yeah, it's a lot of detours. It's a lot of trial and error. Right. When you go into your calling and your purpose, it's not going to happen overnight. A lot of people I've talked to, they're like, well, I haven't found my purpose. How do I do it, Mina? It takes a lot of self-reflection.
A
And
lot.
I love how that you're really more aware of the patterns that come up, what drains me, what energizes me, and you got into the human design piece, right? And then you're
Hmm.
actually using that practically. So I love all of this. Thank you so much for sharing that. So how did your own identity shift when you began to apply human design to everyday office and career decisions? So how did that shift over time?
So, well, first of all, because this moment of discovering my design was such an awakening, as you said, to borrow your own word, the first like major piece was that because I was in my mid to late 30s already when I discovered, well, mid 30s when I discovered human design, and then heading to my late 30s. And especially I think for women, there's that misconception that you have to have everything figured out by the time you're 30, and that's like that can be late, right? And I think at that point I had kind of like given up. I was like, well, I missed the train. Now I just have to stick with whatever this is that I'm doing. When I discovered human design and started experimenting with the system, the first thing that happened was that I said, you know what? It's not too late. It's never too late. I can change things around whenever I want to. Whether like I'm 40, 50, 60, it doesn't matter. Age is not important. And I really treated the whole thing as like a life lab situation where I put myself through different tests and I was doing like different experiments. And a big experiment for me was like learning to set boundaries. And I think that's like something that shifted my identity altogether, not just in my career, but like in every aspect of my life, because there's something in human design called your energy type. And so your energy type speaks to how like your energy works. And I'm a manifester. So that means that translates into having an energy that works in bursts. It's not consistent. I have those moments that, whether that's like a few days or a few weeks, where I have this massive energy and I can create and produce much more than most people can in this timeline. But I can't be in that like mode all the time. I need like to pause and rest in between. And because of that like great energy that I carry, people often assume that, I can always be like that.
Mhm.
And I was going with it. I was like, yeah, great. Okay, I'll always be like that. But I was always finding myself right before getting burnout. And there were times, where I was hoping that I would get sick so I could rest. And this
Mm.
is such a, like reflecting on it now, it's so sad,
Yes.
to be in that mindset, like to wish that you get sick.
Yeah.
And so that was a big shift for me, like learning to say, this isn't how I work. This is how I work. Not like, obviously I adjust in situations. I think we should all adjust in different scenarios and different situations. I have different roles, but setting the boundaries and communicating your needs is such an important part of self-development, because at the end of the day, I think that's what it is. Like you self-develop all the time, and it's a never-ending process, in my
Yeah.
opinion, anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely. I loved how you just connected that energetic piece to how you show up at work or in everyday life. And I do agree with the whole thing with them boundaries, because that's exactly where my identity shift started as well. And I can speak to so many women here, whoever's listening, whether it's you're an entrepreneur or a corporate professional, we just go all the way into burnout. Like we don't even know that we're burnt out at times. I didn't know. Like I just felt numb. And to your point, like, let's really get sick. The universe forced it. So I got COVID one time and I was like super sick. And I was like, why is this happening to me? Like, oh my God, I didn't get my work done, right? I'm just in that logical mode. But I realized like there was a reason for this because I was super burnout. And the
Mm,
universe was like telling me, like, I need to slow down and
yeah.
forcing you to rest and look into it. And then also there are times even now, like just like you said, I have bursts of energy and then I'm just like, my hand is killing me. I'm so tired. Right. So I didn't understand what that meant. I thought something was wrong with me. Like everyone would think like maybe I need to go to the doctor or I need to check something. Right. But we never think about it from a place of the human design, the energetic type. And so I just did a quick reading and I was like, what? And she was like, hey, you're a generator. And I was like, what does that mean though? Like, how do you apply it? And she was like, generators need a lot of rest, right? You can't keep
You're
working.
a projector, right?
Yes, yes, of course, projector. Thank you so much for, correcting me. I'm a projector. Yeah, everything sounds like super similar. So projector, and I was like, yeah, you need to kind of take a lot of rest all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, even younger days, I was like this, right? I didn't understand why, because no one taught me it. So now I purposely restructured my business. I actually take Mondays off now, right? And it's helping
Oh,
so much to run the business and my life with ease. And to your point, setting boundaries with clients, with family, hey, saying like, I don't do after 5 o'clock. And this is a huge thing because a lot of people be like, I don't know if I like, respect that, but the right people will respect you for setting those boundaries. But I love how you talked about that and how it's aligned to each type of energy type.
mm,
Right. So absolutely. So, so, so important. So thank you for sharing that. And,
mm.
we talked about projectors. There's so many different types, generators, manifestors. So how do each one of these, what are the differences and how does it show up in typical office situations like meetings, project handoffs, like especially if you're in corporate though, because that's tough, right? You have to show up on time and get the deadlines. You have to meet them, but then you say like you're burnt out, right? So what are the differences and how does it show up?
So if we could say that there are two categories, we have the sacral types and the non-sacral types. So the sacral types are the generators and the manifesting generators. And by sacral, I mean that these are the types that have a consistent access to their energy, so they can do the work. They're here to do the work. That doesn't mean, though, that they have to constantly be on or that they don't get burnout or that they don't get tired. But for them, the question is, how do I regenerate my energy so that it's, it keeps flowing and it's with ease and, in alignment. So for generators, for example, they, from my experience working with generators, a good way for them is to start by prioritizing what brings them joy, because that's how generators renew their energy. So that advice that often people give us, start your day with the things you hate the most, like to get them out of your way. That's not true for generators. Generators need to start with what they love. Ideally, we want them to delegate the tasks that they don't want to do. But obviously, in an office dynamic, a workspace dynamic, that's not always possible. So making sure that you do things that bring you joy for generators, that's like the number one. Then the manifesting generators, the other sacral type, they are fast, they pivot, they want to do different things, they get bored easily. So for them, it's all about keeping it interesting. They have their tasks at work, but not having that repetitiveness in their days is good for them. So to keep switching things up, that's a really great way of doing it. I used to have a manifesting generator in my team as a team leader, and it was amazing how she thrived by given different tasks, completely different tasks, and going from one to the other with such ease and grace. I definitely couldn't do it, but she was really good at doing that. And then we have the non-sacral types, so projectors like yourself. They work well in focused time slots. So ideally you want to work for 3-4 hours and then have a break. And obviously, when you're at work, you probably can't just lie down and rest, but making sure that during your break, you have no stimuli. So no podcasts, no music, no chatting with colleagues. And I don't know how you feel about that as a projector, but I find that projectors just really need to switch off. Even for 10 minutes, that really helps them. Yeah, is that true?
That is true. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then manifestors, as I said, because I'm a manifestor myself, we have this, it's really important that manifestors learn how to schedule their days and their weeks so they can produce the work during the times where their energy is up and slow down when they're, they need to rest and recharge. And then finally, reflectors, they are the most rare type. So only 1% of the population are reflectors. And they're really good at picking up the overall tone of the room. So in the workspace, they're the ones that they know what works well, what doesn't, they have that bird's eye view. And they need space and time before contributing. So for reflectors, making sure that they have that spaciousness in their schedules, that's really, really helpful for them. And also in the workspace, because feedback is really important, right? At work, we give feedback, people give us feedback. Again, your type can really help you understand how you best receive feedback. Generators, for example, they respond really well to very specific, practical input. Manifestors, they need direct, respectful communication. Projectors, and again, you can tell me if that's true, they really need to feel valued in the workspace. That's really important to be recognized. Yes. For projectors. So yeah, there are all sorts of ways, and that's just the type. So that's just one part of your chart, right? So if you go deeper in it, then you discover other things, from your strategy and from your authority and your profile. So there's so much to learn.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing every single one of these and how it relates to what's in the workplace, right? How it aligns. And I do agree, as a projector, I can work in small, 3-4 hours, but that's why I do Saturday, Sundays. I'm no, I just need no podcasts. Even on Mondays, I was no calls, but I can do a little bit of work each, here and there. But I do agree that I just need to turn off my brain or just everything and just sit there. It's helpful for 1 or 2 days, and then I'm back on it again. So, and I do agree with what you said about the valuing, and that's something that I really look into when I find my company. If I'm in corporate, when I worked as a career coach, I was really good at looking at what culture felt aligned with my values and what I value, authenticity. And I was in the other podcast episodes, I was talking about how different types of cultures just didn't work for me because I didn't feel valued, and that was very important. So everything that you're saying is very super accurate. And I know I'm talking to a business partner, and she's a generator, and she was telling me just right now, it depending on what tasks I do, we have a VA that she's delegated it to. She's I'd have little energy for this, and she adjusts according to that with her business. But I know in corporate it's a little tough, but I like how you said start with like something that gives you joy in the morning, right? And I like just like those simple rituals. So going into that next question. So
Mhm.
are there any simple daily experiments that someone can try this week to test how their energy aligns with their work tasks? Especially, and this question I want to target, especially for executives, because I know it's super hard for like VPs and tech, right? For example. So if someone was listening to this, what can they do?
That's such a good question, because I think what I see from my own clients is that, often people come to me and they know something is off, but they
Mhm.
don't know what. And as I said, that was my experience as well. So the first thing is like bringing awareness into how you work. So, one simple thing is just track your energy. What leaves you satisfied and energized? What drains you? Try different things. Try starting your day in one way and then in another way, and see how your body responds. So it's really important to create that mind body connection and see, like, tune into your body and see how your body responds to things. And for the sacral beings, that's really, it comes from their gut response to things. Like, you do something, you listen to something, there's some sort of stimulus around you. How does your body respond to that? So become aware of that, and then experiment with timing and experiment with pacing. Just notice how you show up and how your work impacts you, and then take it from there. Because I can guarantee that most people will say, something doesn't feel right, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And just taking it one step at a time. I tell my clients to do like the energy audits. I did that for
Mm.
myself. Like even if for example, if they're entrepreneurs listening, just like not saying yes to everything, which comes into what you're saying is boundary setting. And we call it boundaries is not just physical or scheduling meetings, like energetic boundaries, right? It's super important. And then just doing like, okay, what if I talk to this person? So getting on a call, getting on a podcast, even before podcast, we did the alignment call, right? So I have these alignment calls to see like, how is the vibe, right? Just for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Do I feel energized or does it feel draining? Where do I feel it in my body? Do I have this like nerve-wracking like anxiety, or do I really feel like, hey, like after the call ends, I'm just so stoked. Like I get super energized at times. And that's how I know like these are just small cues that was like, yeah, you know what? This is actually aligned. Let me do more of this. But take it one step at a time, right?
Yeah,
So doing
absolutely.
energy audits, like for every conversation, could be a small coffee chat or just one small meeting, the culture at work, the manager you're talking to. And yeah, like for some people who feel like maybe it's not aligned, I know it's difficult to pivot, but that's
Mhm.
also one thing I want to say that if you are looking for your next role, or if you're an identity shift, if you're in that transition period as an entrepreneur, you would have to, like, Kat said, really go deep and be self-aware. Just journal. Maybe take some time to journal. I was doing that last week. Like, what really makes me happy? What makes me fulfilled? But what makes me feel like, wait, this is giving me the ick. Maybe I should shift to something else. Right? So it
Yeah.
could just be, it sounds simple, but it's not as simple for everyone. And for people who are actually super high achieving women, it's so hard for them to like slow down. Right. So I know it's a little forced for men who you are listening to, just listen, right? So the woman just listen in, just kind of take like literally no emails. You know how many times I've seen women get like check their emails on weekends, and it's like
Yeah.
no emails, no nothing, just sit there.
Yeah.
Like just sit there and be and just feel
Yeah.
into it. Right.
I
So
agree.
that's yeah.
Creating your own set of rules, especially as an executive, because obviously an executive will have more responsibilities, but I feel that they have more freedom over like creating their own rules and their own schedule. Like I recently worked with a marketing executive, and we realized in our conversation that one of her biggest like drainers in her life was the back-to-back meetings. Like she just
Exactly.
couldn't sustain them. So she made that change. Like she blocked, time in her calendar so people couldn't just like book back-to-back meetings with her. And it was a very simple change, but for her it was huge.
Right.
And then for others like myself, it meant like a completely, like a huge career shift. But it can be anywhere in between, you know, it's a really broad spectrum. So it's really important to understand your own mechanics.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And we tend to compare, right? So we want tend to compare like she's doing easily, like she's growing so fast. We're not. Well,
Yeah.
and I talked to a business partner and she was saying the same thing. Like, you know, we have different energies. Like she's a generator and projector. We need rest. She needs more rest than I do. And, you know, you have to honor that, right? If you're working with your clients or if you have a co-founder or whoever that is, right? And honor your cycles. We to go into like the feminine cycles. I know a lot of women came into this space on the podcast talking about like menopause, right? 50 plus. So that's a different thing, right? Knowing your energies levels there. We're still in the workplace. So exactly, right? Knowing, and to your point, there's no age. We don't want to talk about age here. You know, you're
Yeah.
capable of everything, but it's really about capacity, right? And I want
Yeah.
to express that because I myself thought it was like maybe I'm not capable of something, of making that revenue or making my business expand. It's not about
Mhm.
capability or age or these external factors. It's just you need to really adjust and know your capacity. And that does take some time, right? To know
Yeah.
your, be self-aware. This is why we're having this conversation with Kat, which I know human design is like super, super helpful.
Yeah.
And going into the question of, this is a very important question and something that I really talk about these days, but what are some subtle ways people unintentionally dim their light at work? And how can they
Mhm.
reclaim it gently and like using this human design or energetic blueprint?
I love that question. I mean, I would say that especially women, like we know how to dim our light at
Yeah.
work. Like it's as if someone gave us instructions the moment we were born here. Here's how you do it.
Okay.
And we do it a lot. And I think it can be with something really small, like not using your voice when you feel like you should use your voice, or like over editing yourself in meetings. A big one is overcommitting to projects to prove your value, or constantly like adapting to everyone else's pace.
Yeah.
So there's like a million different ways I think that we end up dimming our light. And in human design, I would say the part of human design that relates the most to that, it's looking at your centers. So a center in human design, when you look at your human design chart, you will see 9 boxes. And so these are the centers, and each center represents a different like part of your life. It can be the emotions, your well-being, your energy, your motivation, like different things. When you have open centers, so they won't be colored in your chart, these are often areas where it's easily to get conditioned. So I often see, you know, a very like common pattern to see is with people that have an open ego center. They tend to overcommit and like to prove their value. So because they're not consistent in that area of their chart, their energy is not consistent in that area, they need to they feel that they should overcompensate. So working with your centers in human design is a really powerful way to understand, you know, how you've been conditioned, which leads to like dimming your light, and how to get out of that situation and actually use your centers as sources of wisdom instead of sources of conditioning.
Right.
And it's really, for me, it's one of the most like fascinating parts of
Yeah.
human design, like looking at your open centers, because it can really tell you a lot about
Yeah.
someone.
I love this. No, and I can relate because like I got a human design reading and she was also talking about the ego, the centers. And I was always the person over give and over prove myself the worth, right? Because that's what I was conditioned to, right? That people were like, you need to like really explain everything. And then she was like, this is what you're doing, and that's your ego center, and you need to shift it this way. And I was like, wow. And like to your point, it was so fascinating. Like I didn't even realize it. And then after she gave me that reading, I was like, yeah, she's right. Like it's super accurate. And, you know, I applied that human design reading, what she had told me, to my own business. And, you know, I serve very differently and I setting the boundaries. I don't overgive anymore. I don't explain my worth. I've taken that, I reclaimed that power, that inner power, right? Right. And I don't
Mm.
dim my light. And that's how I learned it. I actually learned it from human design readings. So to everyone who's listening, like please get a reading from anyone or even learn it from Kat because it is super helpful. I didn't know about this the whole entire time until recently. So it's
Yeah.
so amazing. It's so intriguing. And a lot of people, that's why we're having this conversation because a lot of people don't know about it, right? So I love how you're bringing this to awareness for others out
Mm.
there, especially the corporate.
Yeah.
We're so tied to AI and the tech and the trends. We'd never look at this part of it, right?
Yeah.
At all. So
Absolutely.
amazing. Yeah. And going into advice. So, what's one piece of advice you'd give someone who wants to grow their career? So, whether it's an entrepreneur or a corporate executive, but not at the cost of their energy or authenticity.
I think just really, understanding yourself. So the first step for me is always awareness. The second step is experimentation. So, with a human design reading, in your first reading anyway, you can't have your whole chart explained to you because it's too much. Like you need to walk away with something that is actionable, right? So you start small. You start with like a few parts of your chart that really resonate with you and like made sense to you. And then you need to commit to experimenting. That's really, really important because there is no system out there that is going to solve your problem in an hour.
Yeah.
And if you don't put the work, I always say that to my clients. I always have them commit to that idea that, you need to do the work. I can't do the work for you. I can guide you, but you
Right.
need to commit. And, once you experiment and you learn things about yourself, then comes the integration part. And that, of course, can be tricky when you are in a workspace where certain rules and procedures are in place. Being open about how you work and tying that to practical results. Because it's not about saying, oh, I need to pivot a lot because that's best for me. It's more about saying in the corporate world or in the workspace, I need to pivot more to bring the best results that I can. And that's like, right, that's in the interest of everyone involved. So yeah, like if you follow that pattern, like the awareness, experimentation, integration, I think you really discover unbelievable things about yourself. You bring so much ease into your life, even by like doing the small changes. It doesn't have to be huge. And that's like, I always say that small changes are where, the big transformation comes from. Because I think we're so used to, for example, in like social media, you see someone's transformation journey, right? And you see the beginning and the end.
Right.
Whatever the transformation journey is. You don't see what happened in between, but so much happened in
Yes.
between. So many small changes, so many small shifts.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say that would be my answer to your question. Like, there are many ways where you can still be in the workspace without dimming your life and with having like an amazing career. You don't have to dim your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And yes, I love how you talked about experimentation before integration because people just get into the integration part without experimenting. But we think of like I used to experiment with everything. I still am, right? It's always about experimenting for me and then I integrate it. But the experimentation part is really fun. People think it's like, oh my God, I have to do this inner work. I have to do this, the meditation. But like, self-awareness, like, doing the
Mm.
energize. It's actually fun. Like at first, it's a little hard because it is out of your comfort zone, I would say. But actually, you can think of it and reframe it as a fun process because
Mm.
there's so many gifts that just come out. When I started like 10 years ago, I was just like, I didn't even know I was creative. I didn't know I could draw or write or coach, or even now I do modeling. I was like, I had no idea, right? But then these gifts come out and then just unravel. They're hidden. And when you know, they're like, oh my God. And and like you said, based on like, hey, I actually have this energy, it gets very fascinating. It's very interesting. I
Yeah.
loved how you talked about just take that one small step. It just could be a simple thing that we talked about. And knowing that over time, we can't compare our journey, but integrate that slowly into practical steps and do it consistently and get that momentum going.
Mm-hmm.
And that will shift a lot of things. Like you said, it's the messy middle, but the messy middle is what makes you that unapologetic, right? Strong person, woman or man that really is like super transformational because we see like we always focus on the end outcome, but we never really enjoy that messy middle part, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
amazing. And yeah, what's next for you, Kat? What are you calling in? Any new programs, collaborations?
So I definitely want to keep like collaborating with amazing women that, you know, have impact in their own space and with their own way. You know, since I started doing this, I've been connecting with other women like yourself, and it brings me so much joy. I think it's like one of the best parts of what I do.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely something that I want to keep pursuing. But also recently, I've been feeling like I'm being called to do a live retreat. That's definitely something that is going to be in my plans for the near future.
Nice.
Because I crave, you know, the internet is a great way to connect with everyone around the globe, but the presence, like being in the same space, I crave that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think I'm
Amazing.
that like
I
I'll
love
let you
this.
know.
And the whole the whole collaboration thing. I know we met on Threads actually,
Yeah.
not LinkedIn. I was like, Threads, first of all, I want to put it out there. If you haven't, I literally told my business partner and everyone, like, go on Threads if you're so interested in like a sisterhood, as
Mm.
like literally just collaborations, right? Finding your tribe. And they're very supportive on there. That's how we met, me and Kat, and it's been great so far. So yeah, look, likewise, I've been collaborating with other women, building something rising together. So much, hopefully, that you can bring in more for you. And I do agree with the retreat. I haven't really been to a live retreat. I do want to go soon. There's so many out there, and a lot of people, women are bringing things together. So I just hope that goes well for you. Happy to support you and whoever's listening. I think it'd be a great initiative. So thank you so much for sharing that. And going into a fun rapid fire round, which I really love. I enjoy listening to everyone's answers. So let's get into it. A place where you feel completely aligned. It could be a travel destination or it could be anything like a house or whatever, but where you feel completely aligned.
At home.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, I love that. Yes. I love it. Now I'm at home and I just sit in my room and I just feel super
yeah.
aligned. It's home. It's that feeling, right? So absolutely I love that answer. Amazing. And a book or resource that changed how you see life.
Oh, that's a hard one. Well, I highly recommend to everyone, especially everyone interested in human design, reading Erin Claire Jones' How Do You Choose? She's a human design teacher. She's my teacher, and it's fascinating because it's not a technical book. So yeah, I definitely recommend that.
Amazing. I love to read one. Yeah, I'm getting more into the energetics and human design now. So
Mm.
definitely want to check it out. That's amazing. And this is a good question. If human design had a theme song, what kind of music would it be?
Something upbeat thing, something
Yeah.
happy, because it brings, I don't know, I've heard that from many people, and I can definitely say that
Right.
for myself, that it brings you a lot of joy, human
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
It's so cool, you know,
It is. It
and
is
yeah,
really
like,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, upbeat, absolutely. I do agree with that as well. It's very upbeat. For someone who doesn't know, like I would really just go today and just like search it up or follow Kat. She posts a lot of great content on Threads on
Right.
Instagram. Like it's really nice. It's a cool thing. And you realize it just makes your life easier too. So
It does.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would start from generating, your chart, and you can do that for free. You can do it on my website for free as well, and start with your type, your strategy, and your authority, because otherwise it can get really overwhelming. So these
Right.
three parts first, and then, yeah, take it from there.
Amazing. Amazing. Kat, this has been such a refreshing and insightful conversation.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for your presence. So, what I
Thank you.
appreciate most is the reminder that success doesn't always come from pushing harder, but sometimes it comes from understanding ourselves more deeply, right? So, when people reconnect with their natural energy, trust their inner guidance, and make decisions from alignment rather than pressure, work begins to feel very different. And I can speak for this, right? Like for me, it's been super amazing. So it's been more clearer, it's lighter, you feel more, and it feels more sustainable, right? Especially if you're an entrepreneur. And that's something many professionals are craving right now. So, for
Mhm.
everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to explore your own patterns of energy, decision making, and alignment. And follow Kat on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. And as we continue having conversations like this on Voices of Impact, I'm also opening the door to something I'm very excited about called Sovereign Rise Global Collective. So it's really a collective for leaders, creators, and change makers who are building from integrity, alignment, and identity. So it's not really just content, it's really a platform where we get together, we rise together, we collaborate, we share wisdom, we'll have circles. It's going to be like literally a sisterhood, or even, we also have men coming in who are interested. So if you feel called to be a community builder, a founding sister or brother, partner, speaker, anything, you want to co host a retreat, come in, invite you, and I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much, Kat, again for your wisdom. I think this was a lovely conversation. I think everyone will find it super valuable. And until next time, keep leading with clarity, alignment, and authenticity. Zen, thank you so much for being part of Voices of Impact.
Thank you so much for having me.